Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I'm Bill Knight. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great fourth weekend.
It was.
I was going to say it was low-key, but no, it really wasn't.
It was hot in the Northeast.
Some people had to go to hell just to cool down.
Yeah, right. Do you know
I'll
that
tell you, no, it was hot. No doubt about that.
in New Jersey, they say that 10 people died from heat exhaustion. They didn't have any air conditioning in their apartments. No, I'm sorry, 25. At least 25 people died in New Jersey from heat exhaustion. That's just New Jersey. How about New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut? You know, all those other states, Pennsylvania, that was affected by this devastating heat. And of course, you know, the mayor of New York, Zoran Mandani, he goes on. He goes on seriously on television, and he tells the residents of New York during this crisis, it's important that you pay attention to your thermometer in your houses and put your heat at 78 degrees. Bill, somebody went into Gracie Mansion, his house.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what was it in there?
It was 63. 63. That's too cold for me. 63. This guy is telling everybody, oh, and by the way, you know, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got married, and nothing like a little intimate soiree, a little intimate gathering of your friends for a marriage. They had it at Madison Square Garden, and they had the AC jacked up so high in Madison Square Garden that a section, and this is the truth, a section of the Bronx, 10,000 people, lost their power intentionally because of Mandani. And do you know where that section was? It was a Jewish neighborhood. So help me, it's the truth. So, I mean, tell me this guy, he did a speech, Bill, over the weekend.
Yeah, I know. I saw it.
Mandani.
Yeah.
He did a speech, anti-American as all get go. This guy was talking about how bad we are and we were never great. He was one, and by the way, he did it from behind George Washington's desk over in Gracie Mansion, I guess. I mean, these people have no.
Why does he have George Washington's desk in Gracie Mansion?
You would think that would be in the White House, right? But I don't know. Apparently, they had it. You know, Washington. He spent time in New York. You know, I think for a while they even ran the government for a while. I know they ran it in Philadelphia, but I think for a while it was in New York too.
Well, he was the commander of whatever army at that time,
Continental.
because he was that before he was president. And you know, so he spent time there. But
yeah, but you know, the time he spent when he was the head of the Continental Army, they were actually. They were fighting on Long Island. It's just a little history, Bill. Mm-hmm. They were fighting on Long Island, the British, and they were losing, the Continental Army. They retreated. When they retreated back to the opposite shore of. I guess it would be where Brooklyn is right now. They got to Brooklyn, and they were pinned against the river, and. They were going to, if they stayed there, the British were going to crush and destroy the army, and that would be the end of the uprising. And tell me this isn't divine providence. They had a fog move in at nighttime, Bill. A fog. Never happens. I mean, I think the time that I spent in New York, I don't ever remember seeing a fog in New York. They had a fog move in. It literally covered the Continental Army. What they did in the protection of the fog is Washington had his army quietly. He had some guys, they lit fires on the shore to make it look like they were still there. And he had a few guys man the fires to keep them going and to talk loud. And the Continental Army took their boats and their rafts and anything they could get their hands on, and they quietly went across into Manhattan because they had no bridges, right? And the British had ships in the river, and they said sometimes they were so close they could hear the guys on the British ships talking. And they snuck across into Manhattan, the entire army, and got away. So when we talk about Washington and New York, his experience was relatively short. He got into New York and he left, and the war continued, thank goodness, and we're here today. But Bill, this guy Mandani, he's only been a U.S. citizen for 10 years.
Well, there's talk, and he's floated too, but then he goes, "Ah, no, 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 no." But there are people talking about, well, let's change it when we take power. The Democrats, they want to change the Constitution to where a non-citizen, or not a non-citizen, but
Yeah,
a person that was not born here
right.
can run as president. Because there's talk that they want to run. The Democratic Socialists are strong and growing. Uh, make no bones about it. Now, I don't know that represents the entire Democrat Party, the mainstream people out there that vote Democrat because they're Democrat. But if they understood what was going on, they definitely wouldn't vote. But not for Mandami or AOC. And AOC is they're getting bold and brazen now about going against the Constitution and the United States and what's it about. But I always tell everybody, they sit there and say, well, we were always a multinational society. Well, I'm not going to argue with that, but we have borders, and if you look at and some people go, well, I don't care that the border's open. Well, look at it this way: it's a property line. It is a property line. Now this is your property, and on the other side of that fence is your neighbor's property. You take that fence down, and I can tell you this from experience where in Pennsylvania there was property line, and I used to tell somebody, I said, you know, somebody has to have access of your property to get to a piece of land that they bought, and they built a trailer park down there, believe it or not, and he let them have it. And then one day they came back with a lawsuit that they got that land because he gave them access and other property of his that he was paying tax on, and he had intentions to do stuff with, but he gave up a few acres of ground. And I'm like going, you
He gave an
didn't
inch and
guard
they
your
took a
property.
mile.
Yeah, your property can be taken, and they come in and they are not vetted. Then
They're
now I saw
squatters, right,
people,
Bill?
they're squatters.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
this was and the person that did it was a legitimate business person. He was a dentist that bought that property and said, "Hey, could you let me give up some right away?" And then he drilled every cavity he had that was worth money. He was a dentist, all right. But he,
Yeah.
you know,
It's sad, Bill. It's sad that we have a party right now that what they did is they gave up their dignity and their what they all those years of being a certain type of party. I'm talking about the Democrat Party.
mhm.
Whether you were a Democrat or not, at least you respected the party for being an American party. It stood for America, you know. But it is given that up now, and the people who are manipulating that party right now, the socialists, they come right out and tell you they have disdain. They have disdain for our country. They look around at what we have and they think you have no right to have that. Mandani said in his speech that we're a country of businesses run by monopolies. And I heard somebody say, that's not true. You look around at the automotive business, the automotive industry, right? Yeah, we have a lot of different big companies, but no
Mhm.
one company has a monopoly in the car business. And by the way, those companies are on every day they're in operation, they literally on the verge of going out of business if they don't do things right. I can point to Chrysler. Chrysler almost went out of business. Actually, well, technically, Chrysler went bankrupt at one time. They
And
shouldn't be
Iacocca
here.
came along and redid it.
That's right. But there were other companies, American Motor Company. For a long time, they made the Rambler and cars like that, and they were relatively prosperous. And then they started
Well,
to make some turkeys, and they
they
went out of
kind of
business.
had a socialist philosophy in their the old Chrysler and the Ramblers. They didn't do. They said, "Okay, we got a car. We're going to keep making this car. We're not going to do anything. We're not. We're going to cut on this and that." And what happened was technology passed them up with their frames. They were a big boat on a cheap frame, and you know it didn't work. So, and that's how socialism works. It's a big drain on your financial resources to give, and they got to take, and then of course they got to Mandami, with the heat problem, and him keeping his temperature down to 63, where everyone else has got to hold theirs up to 78. You know, this is elitism. That's elitism.
Bill, I heard somebody say that Mandani should have his citizenship revoked and he should be deported for his treasonous speech and his actions, too. I mean, he's openly, by the way, he does it with that goofy smile. Everything about this guy has that insincere grin. And if at first you look at him and you think, "What a nice smile," because you haven't seen it that much. You don't know the guy, but then you realize that smile is glued to his face, and literally he uses it when he's shivving you, when he's stabbing you in the back, when he's taking your property, when he's destroying your city. He does it with that goofy ass smile. Pardon my French, but it's true, folks. New York deserves better. I heard somebody say, New York is the largest capitalist city in the world, and it survived worse. I don't think so. I don't think they've had worse than a blatant and open communist. And by the way, Trump, during his speech, he didn't pull any punches. He didn't call them socialists or national socialists. He called them for what they are, communist.
Well, you know what? Socialist, national socialists are communist, and they're trying to make it a good thing. And I'm sorry, you cannot candy coat what they are. You cannot do it, but they're trying to do it right now to sell it. And I don't see how they believe it's going to work, except for maybe that they don't care if it doesn't work, because when they're there selling it, they've got their power, they've got their base, and they've got you hook, line, and sinker. And if we all fall to it, we're not going to get it back unless we have another revolution.
And do you know how many people all over the world have died as a result of socialism? Dare I say communism? I think it's communism. 100 million people. The rough estimate is 100 million people around the globe under communism have died, have paid the ultimate price. That is an amazing number. But by the way, these young kids who weren't alive for 9/11, who are now at voting age, who think this guy Mandani's their guy, they're as dumb as a box of rocks, because they weren't taught a damn thing in school, because they had a bunch of useless, vampant teachers who didn't do their job. A lot of these guys would go in and they would hang around and they would do the same lesson plans year in, year out. They started it in their first year, and they'd be in 20 years. They would just go in for the pension, and they didn't do their job. They didn't teach them about the history of our country and what we were founded on. Maybe it was because the fatheads didn't know it themselves. But they sure as heck, you have a bunch of kids now who don't know how important this country is and all the wonderful things it has done and the people that it has saved around the world. Yes, have we made mistakes? Absolutely. Absolutely. Hell, we made a mistake 3 years ago when we had Joe Biden as the president. He went down and opened the borders up and let every stranger in the world come into our country. And by the way, we'll be paying that penalty for a long time. President Trump doing his best trying to remove these people, but every time he tries to do something, one of the leftist lunatic judges tries to interfere, John Fetterman was talking about what would make him leave the Democrat Party.
I'm surprised he hasn't already.
Well, I got a feeling, Bill, he's going to go. Joe Manchin, a longtime Democrat, sometimes talked of as a possible presidential candidate. Now he's a retired senator. He was on TV. He has left the party. He's an independent.
Yeah, and he's trying to get him to do that. The problem with going to be an independent, they don't have the gravitas as a party yet. I mean, you don't have primaries, and You got to. There are two political systems,
Well,
and
what
that's
happens,
it.
Bill, in like states like Pennsylvania, they don't allow independents to vote in the primary. In states like Massachusetts, you can be an independent and vote in either the Democrat or the Republican primary, whatever suits your fancy. So, what they should do is do it nationally, just like Massachusetts. All right, if you're an independent, if you decide you're going to vote for the Democrat, then you can vote in the Democrat primary or the Republican. That should be what an independent can do. But in Pennsylvania, they say no, you're an independent. You're neither a Republican or a Democrat, so you can't vote in either one of those primaries. Anyway, John Fredman was on the air talking about what would make him leave the Democrat Party. Listen.
And now the ones that difference between me and other Democrats, we're a Democrat that's willing to call out these individuals and some of the absurd things that they have said and the kinds of beliefs they are. The one thing that absolutely is in common, just contempt for Israel, that essentially is becoming just rank anti-Semitism. The individual that just won in Colorado, she refused to describe the situation where someone firebombed a group of Jews that was just rallying for the Israeli hostages at that time and killed a woman. She refused to even address that. Is that anti-Semitic? So this is the point. And now there's that strong correlation. Anti-Israel, drifting into anti-Semitism, very, very intensely anti-American. And now just here, that individual also believes America deserved 9/11. And of course, Israel deserved the massacre of 10/7. That's been building. When I was on Jesse's show back in early May, I warned. I said the Democratic Party we're heading for an orgy of socialism, and now look, and here we are for these things. So these very specific kinds of candidates, these aren't my smears. These are using their own words and their own views and their tweets and the things that they've said and the way they've behaved. And then, of course, you have the king of the dirt bags of P. Hustle up in Maine, roughing up ex-girlfriends and spent a decade on the social media called Kick that's been described as the predator's paradise for why people are on that kinds of platforms. So, as a Democrat, it's entirely appropriate to just call that out. I'm always happy to be on your show. You're not going to see me criticize or go after. We have some great candidates like Ossoff, Brown, and you have Tallarico. He's a nice guy, no matter what anybody would say thing. And of course, Roy Cooper in North Carolina,
Senator.
So these are normal Democrats. I don't know why we have other Democrats, even people that are calling for their jobs in leadership, saying you're next. Why can't you just push back and say these are abhorrent beliefs? Communism, socialism. And now for me, what my real concern is, the Democratic Party is going to put it into the platform, as an anti-Israel party, that Israel does not have the right to defend itself and to exist. And the second that becomes a formal part of our platform, and that's the one thing that would push me out of this party, because I'm deeply alarmed the way the Democratic Party is going after Israel and allowing to just rank anti-Semitism to flourish, in the left on the campuses as well too.
And I don't understand that, Bill. I don't understand. And there's a large faction of Jewish people, like in New York, who are very pro-Democrat, and I think it doesn't make sense. It does not make it.
I don't think they understand the rhetoric that's going on and how serious that rhetoric is. It's not rhetoric. It is. It's factual what they want to do, and America is a melting pot of everybody. It's not white land. It's not Jewish land. It's not black land or Native American Indian land or Hispanic land. It is America. It is a melting pot of everybody that wanted to, build something together better than maybe it was dominant one way or the other. And we've had to go through our own, racial education, but we've grown together. But here you got somebody that's going, yeah, you know what? They don't wear the same clothes that we do, so they can't play in our ball field. They
Well,
can't play in our park.
I look at the situation. I think that I listen to Fetterman talk. By the way, you may not like how he dresses. He wears a hoodie and shorts. He loves that. I think he wears it everywhere. But they're always clean. He must open his closet and see 100 hoodies, a bunch of shorts. But he's comfortable. But you have to be impressed with what he says. I don't agree with everything he says, obviously, but the guy at least is reasonable, and he tries to be reasonable, and he doesn't like the stupidity that has been rearing its ugly head in his own party.
Well, I think he's open to listen to other ideas, because that's what democracy is all about. And if you look at socialism, communism, and they say, oh, socialism's great, and it's an economic political system where the means of production, factories, land, and resources are owned on heavily regulated. They're regulated by, they say, community workers or the state. In every situation, it has not been the community or the workers. It has been the state.
And Bill, the state leaders live in an entirely different strata than the average worker under communism. I mean, whereas the average worker is driving a beat up car that's 15 years old, that's worth about $2, the members of the state are being chauffeured around in limousines and living in nice houses or nice apartments. There is a class system in communism. Don't think for one second. Look at China. Look at China. Look at the workers in China, and then look at the leaders of China. There's a massive difference there. You can just see it. Look at North Korea. You think Kim Jong-il lives the same way as a guy on the street? I don't think so.
No. We will promote them into elitism, and we're looking at democratic socialism, which by definition, quote unquote, is strong welfare states with high taxes and redistribution. So if you got it, you got to give it up, and you don't get anything. They choose who gets it and how much they get. And
hey, like and share our show. Tell your friends about Jim and Bill. It's Another Day. Jim and Bill, it's another day. If you want to send us an email, we're at mail@jimandbill.com. Donnie Deutsch. I gotta be careful how he pronounces his last name. Donnie Deutsch is he's made a lot of money, I guess, on Wall Street. He's a high-end. He's a big Democrat and a liberal, but even he is a little upset with the Democrat Party. And he was on MSNBC, and here's what he had to say.
Well, let's talk about messaging, Donnie, because even though voters are unhappy with Trump, they're still leaning Republican. Do you think if the economy doesn't improve by November, it can change? Do Democrats need to figure out their messaging when it comes to the economy? Because for whatever reason, Republicans still seem to have this stronghold that we're good for business.
Well, Democrats are going off the rails. They're not even focused. What matters to people is affordability. And Democrats right now are focused on two things. They're focused on anti-Semitism and socialism. That's
not all Democrats.
Not all, but that's where the energy in the parties. When you look at the two candidates that got elected in the last week, one of them talks about that there was not that firebombing in Colorado was not anti-Semitic. I mean, would not acknowledge that when it was a firebombing of people holding a vigil for hostages in Hamas, by Hamas. Another candidate in New York who has been well documented was at a October 8th rally, a pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian rally. This is ridiculous, and they're both running on anti-American, not socialistic, let's abolish ICE, let's abolish prisons, let's abolish everything. Let's abolish the police. It's insane. And the Republicans are going to tar them with this. This is the problem. Even though they are a small sector of the party, this is right now, every Republican strategist is salivating on what these people have said in the past. And they're going to wallpaper it with it. And the Democrats are going down a bad path. They're electing these Democratic socialists. It's a disaster. No matter what you think of it, wherever your politics are, it's bad strategy.
He's absolutely correct. And by the way, the MSNBC host had to interject, not all Democrats. Gag me, you know.
Yeah, right. I have an analogy, but I'm going to leave it alone. You know, we're going to keep it, kosher this morning. But
by the way, if you ever heard him talk about Trump and stuff like that over the past couple of years, he's not a fan. All right. So to hear him bashing the Democrats, it's like, whoa.
Here's my worry about the Democratic Socialists now. You know, they don't care. And if they get enough people to go along with them, they don't have to have a majority at all. They just have to have enough people to go out, break things, and blow them up and make noise. And trust me, if they don't get their way, you know, AOC has said it. If they have to be proactive, violent, they will.
Yeah.
So if they don't get their way come the fall, all bets are off.
You know, Dana Bash.
And if they do, it's even worse.
Dana Bash on CNN, another lefty. She can't hide it sometimes. She really tries to. They were talking about the reflecting pool. You know, the liner was cut again. And they arrested a guy. I think his name was Hearn.
But they say, oh, well, Trump has no proof in this. Oh, no, he just has a big piece of the thing. Yeah. He's bragged about it. He's got all the tools. Where's your proof? They need to get a new line. We need your proof.
Doug Burgum, right, was on with Dana Bash. You know, Burgum's a pretty smart guy. I think he's the former governor of South Dakota, and he's the Interior Secretary, and he was talking about it. And he said, listen to what he said. And Dana Bash is trying to defend the guy who was arrested for cutting it. And by the way, there's video of him in there. He goes in the pool, and you can see him reaching down. He's doing something for about 2 minutes. He gets out of the pool, and then he goes back into it again. So listen.
Turning to something much more serious that happened yesterday, Secretary Burgum, several hundred masked men belonging to the white nationalist group, the Patriot Front, marched with Confederate flags. And they did it through neighborhoods in the U.S. Capitol, at least near the Capitol, and they chanted, "Reclaim America." There's a widely circulated photograph, I'm sure you've seen it, taken by Reuters, of an African-American woman on a subway surrounded by members of this group. Are you concerned about this?
Well, I think we obviously, when we're celebrating America, we've had an incredible celebration, and this is a kickoff of a celebration year. But we know from our very founding that this was something that divided our nation. 85 years after those brave patriots signed the Declaration of Independence, we fought in the bloodiest war America's ever fought, the Civil War. And our nation survived thanks to the courage and leadership of Abraham Lincoln, and led us on a way. As we continue to move forward as a country, we can be an exceptional nation because our ideals are exceptional, that all men are created equal.
Do you condemn this group and what they were doing, and most importantly, what they stand for?
Well, I think that certainly what they stand for is nothing that I could possibly agree with, but one of the foundational principles of the United States, which makes democracy messy, is free speech. And there are plenty of things that I see that I might personally find offensive, irreprehensible. But in America, free speech is allowed, and this is by the whole spectrum of things. I mean, we're a country where someone can run and be elected saying that they're a communist, but yet this is what our nation has stood against and fought for, because we're about life and liberty. We're not about death and tyranny, which we know communism has brought across the country and across history. So there are plenty of things in history, and those things can pop up. But the good news is these small things, I think, are the rare example. What we saw last night, what we've seen this week, is people unifying around our country, unifying around the flag.
I want to move on, but do you, as Interior Secretary, will you recommend to the president that he condemn this group and what they were trying to message, what they did try to message here in Washington?
Well, there have been, Dana, part of my response to that is that there are protests on the mall that people say things that I think are irreprehensible about President Trump, and yet they're allowed to go on because of free speech in our country. And so this is something, but you've seen President Trump. I was with him in North Dakota. I was with him in Mount Rushmore. I was with him last
night. White nationalism. It's, as you said, a part of America's history that still has pockets, but the fact that they were here in Washington on such an important day, I do want to move on.
But I do think, again, I mean, there are people that are saying death to Israel and death to America. I mean, this is part of free speech in America. They can say it, we can object to it, but it is something that comes with free speech in America.
I want to ask.
You know, it's amazing. I was listening to him talk about that. And she's pursuing it. And by the way, she was adamant about that. I saw the picture of that young black woman who's sitting on the subway, and the guys who were with her, supposedly intimidating her, were wearing like these stocking masks that cover your face, white, so you really couldn't see them. She's making the connection, the assumption that they're on the right, and they were not bothering her. They weren't like in her face or trying to intimidate her. They were holding on to. They were going somewhere, and she's trying to make it sound like they didn't. I would submit that there's a good chance that those guys in those masks were probably on your side, Dana. They probably were leftist. They probably were Antifa.
I'm going to say this about Dana, and a lot of people like her. For her to take the role that she's taking, and when she was losing the debate, I want to move on, is that she's got something in her past that she feels guilty about. She did something or was a part of something that she feels guilty about. Look, I'm not going to deny that in history, especially in the European white people, whenever you have a group of one and a smaller group of another, you will have problems. I think, though, you have to look at the fact that as a society, as we grow older and get more mature as a society, we put those stupid things from our past behind us. We evolve, we grow, and we move on. The Democrats keep wanting to go and reach back and resurrect things. There have been situations in Africa with the farmers and where the population has shifted to where you have more blacks there, and you have more black on white crime than the other way around. But again, we evolve. We need to sit there and learn from our past, not sit there and use it to
You and I talked about Obama last week, and how up until his election, we were really growing as a country, uniting. The whole race thing was becoming a subject of the past. We were united, going together as one, and he came and literally threw a hand grenade in that whole thing and made it an issue again. By the way, this was the first black president, and by the two-term black president, but yet he was trying to make it sound like there was a problem. The problem was essentially it was something which he brought back. Bill, Doug Bergram was continuing. I was mentioned he was talking about the reflecting pool with Dana Bash, and she's defending the guy who cut the pool. Listen.
About the reflecting pool, because we spoke about a month ago, and the $16 million no-bid contract to renovate the reflecting pool was something you called fantastic, and you certainly defended the expediting contract in order to try to get it fixed in time for the July 4th. Now, of course, chunks of paint are peeling off the floor. The algae has returned. What went wrong?
Well, the algae is all gone. I mean, that was a momentary thing as the
as it was being refilled, there was algae in the pipes. But the new technology, the nanobubblers that have been installed, if you go down there today and look at it, it is completely clean and clear. And so for the first time, there's actual a solution that involves making sure that we've got an algae-free pond. It keeps being reported that this was paint. It was not paint. This was an industrial liner that was put into the pool for the very first time. Multiple layers, fixing 2.5 miles of expansion.
But it peeled off. Why? Why did that happen? Do you know?
It didn't peel off. There was vandalism. There was box cutters. There have been 7 arrests. There was people literally trying to destroy part of a monument. The reflecting pool is not just a pool on the mall. It is part of the Lincoln Memorial. And if anybody says that they're going to go and vandalize that, it's no different than if someone was throwing.
And you're 100% sure that what happened with the liner was vandalism. You can prove it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely can. And as we drain it, and we've got all the photographs we can see. I mean, there's no possible way.
The photographs of a person or people cutting a 300 or 350 foot gash in the bottom of the reflecting pool?
Dana, I'm not sure why you and others in the media think that you want to keep trying to question whether or not this is an industrial liner. Every farmer and rancher in America that's had their pickup liner lined by this sprayed on liner knows that you literally, it would never just like peel off or fall off. This is like a strong material.
Yeah.
And it's the size of 8 football fields. And the only way you can end up with actual slices in one spot and not the other is that someone physically cut it. And so but the pool itself, it's not leaking. It was leaking 45,000 gallons a day. It's finally been fixed by President Trump. And the American flag blue is working perfectly. And again, it's beyond me why. I mean, the real scandal is about the fact that the state of our capital was in such total disrepair that some people, no one was reporting about. No one was reporting about the pro-Hamas graffiti on the.
Mr. Secretary, you and I talked about this last month.
Yeah, and we're still talking about it.
Well, because it was July 4th and the reflecting pool was closed.
It was closed because it's surrounded by fireworks. It's closed every year on the 4th of July.
But it was closed prior to that in order to fix the reflecting pool.
But it was closed because the largest fireworks display in the country we talked about was set up, and it lines either side of the reflecting pool. You can't have people around fireworks when they're being set up. Now that the fireworks will come down, the fence will come down. The fence was there because of the fireworks.
Copy that. I just want to ask you about one other potential issue here. In May, the president's armored motorcade of SUVs, which can weigh up to 20,000 pounds, drove across that new coating of the reflecting pool's floor. Could that have damaged it?
No, I was with him when we came that night. He didn't take the beast. We were driving in a Cadillac Escalade. It is one of the presidential fleet of cars, but substantially lighter than what you're talking about. And at the time that we were there, they were still putting down the whole base level of this industrial rubber layer was not yet completed. And so there was no damage that night whatsoever. That was one of the questions we asked before we even brought the presidential motorcade there, but not a chance.
How much is it going to cost to fix? And are you going to use the same company that you did in the no-bid contract, or will you open it up to new bids?
We'll use the same company because they did a fantastic job. I mean, even with this damage of the gash that we're talking about, you're talking about, again, this is the size of 8 football fields. It is 8 acres, and we're talking about like 0.001%. Thankfully, the vandalism was small. It was bad. I mean, it could cost tens of thousands of dollars to repair. So then it could fall into a felony thing, just like damaging any other government property could. But it is this is the job that was done to fix the reflecting pool was done extremely well, and hopefully we can move on to this and just talk about how we can continue to do things like take care of this was a deferred maintenance problem. We have deferred maintenance problems across our parks. President Trump is ready to sign the Great American Outdoors Act, which would bring the dollars to help fix all of our parks, not just ones like the National Mall, which is free, but help bring that across the country.
I got to tell you, she's amazing. And by the way, Bill, what the Interior Secretary didn't say was that they're fixing it under the warranty, meaning it's not going to cost us anything to have them fix it.
Yeah, well, you're going to get some more bidders on this, may I just say this, because it was a no bid contract. And, when you take a bid, you take the lowest bidder. So he got it done for less than when Obama tried to fix it. And he did it the right way. But dare I say that maybe somebody that was going to bid and lowball it, maybe they want to sit there and cause damage to it. Should have let me bid on
Well,
it. I could have done it cheaper, and I wouldn't have tore it up.
Here's the thing. They got it on video, this guy. But you're not supposed to go in the reflecting pool. It's not a swimming pool. You're not supposed to be in there. But here's Jesse Waters. Listen.
Interior gave us a look at individuals suspected of vandalizing the reflecting pool. Now, we haven't been able to verify the video, but take a look. June 19th, a male, blue shirt, reaches in, stays there for a little while. He goes back down, comes back up multiple times. What's he doing? Then a female, white tote bag. She reaches in, needs a better angle, sets the bag down, dives in a little deeper. And we don't know who these people are. No one was stopped or questioned by police, so no arrests. And we don't have the police report yet. But what are they doing with their hands in the pool? Are they cutting the lining? Are they peeling off the paint? And we don't know if they're committing a crime. They'll probably tell you they dropped their wedding ring. The Department of Interior says this, quote, in the video, you're seeing two suspects observed destroying and removing a piece of the lining and attempting destruction of the lining. This incident took place on June 19th, 2026, and we are investigating. Destroying, injuring, defacing, or removing cultural or architectural resources is a federal crime. The media, who's been covering liberals destroying public property for decades, believe that reflecting pools off limits. They've toppled statues of our founders.
And it goes on and on. But the fact of the matter is, you see a long shot on the video. You see it's from a distance, Bill. The fact of the matter is, what they don't tell you is that the government has the ability. And by the way, if you watch TV shows like FBI, you can see this. They can take a wide shot from one of their security cameras, and they can zoom in really tight and get a close shot. Now, they're not going to release that to the public, but, you get the wide shot and that's it. And everyone says, well, you really can't see it from here. Well, maybe you can't, but the people who are going to prosecute these people, I'd be willing to bet you that they have close-ups of what they're doing down there. Anyway.
Well, they should. And you know what? I'm all for putting their pictures out for all the world to see. So, when you're at a filling station and somebody goes, yeah, I'm in for a pack of cigarettes, and you look and you go, oh, you're the Yahoo that cut a piece out of the reflecting pool. I really think that we ought to put on public display.
Yeah.
Their pictures. It used to be when you'd go into a store, you would see a check posted that was a hot check, or sometimes even a picture of somebody that is nefarious and does that kind of stuff. You don't have to go to the post office. Put it out there.
Bill, you see these people complaining on the left about all the money that Trump has spent in Washington on the different statues and fountains, and I'm thinking this is the same media that made it was almost joyous for them to cover the rioters pulling down the statues in D.C. in the Biden administration. They would go to classic statues that have been down in D.C. for decades, and they would put graffiti on it, or they would pull it down. Truly obscene. And the media, they just whistled and walked through the cemetery like nothing was going on,
Obama was a divisive president, but I would tend to say that Joe Biden was not only divisive, but he was destructive.
Yes.
I mean, his speech over the weekend was so anti-American that I couldn't believe that a former sitting president, if he really was truly elected, would say anything like that. But what he said about America and everything, I would almost strip his title away. Just say, you know what? He was never the president. The number 46 was a blank space.
But here's what he knows, Bill. He knows, I believe this in my heart. I believe he knows that he really didn't win. I believe he knows that there's a large segment of our country who support the current president. You may not like everything he does. Nobody does. Nobody likes everything I do or you do. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. But for the most part, Trump he's an American. He's on our side.
Right.
And if you know anything about Trump, he is with us. He's not with them. And so when I hear Biden complaining about our country, I think it's because he probably knows in his heart of hearts that if everything had been fair, if there had been no corruption in 2020, he probably never would have been president. Anyway, like and share our show. Tell your friends about Jim and Bill. It's Another Day. Jim and Bill, it's Another Day. If you want to email us, it's mail@jimandbill.com. Boy, this show is going by fast, isn't it? Holy smokes. Bill, they were talking over the weekend about the war in Iran. And Iran keeps violating all of their ceasefire agreements. And Jack Keane, who is he's like the military expert on Fox. Former, I think he was a 4-star general. I mean, the guy is a smart, articulate military man who knows what he's talking about. And he was talking about the red line he believes that President Trump has. And I think that the Iranians are getting close to it. Listen.
General, good morning. And, there are reports of continued activity at an underground nuclear site. It's known as Pickaxe Mountain. The question here, as these negotiations continue, is Iran once again just buying time?
Well, certainly Iran's objectives from the beginning, when we first did negotiations with the Obama administration in Iran, they dragged out negotiations for 2 years. It is one of their strategies. They believe by dragging it out, it wears us down, and likelihood we'd make more concessions. The reality is the Trump administration has gone into this with their eyes wide open. We're obviously in a major diplomatic phase here, and it will likely take some time. I suspect it'll go past the 60-day deadline that we currently have. But we have lots of leverage here. You mentioned part of it, holding back financing based on their achieving the goals of clearly of the negotiation. And I think the goals are really threefold. You mentioned one, ending their nuclear enterprise for sure. Restriction on ballistic missiles and support for proxies are the other two. I do think that the leverage we have with money, with also limited attacks and return to multi-combat operations, certainly has some impact on them. But it's also important, Cheryl, to recognize this from Iran's perspective. And what are they thinking? And it's likely the following. When they shut down the Straits of Hormuz, it stopped the war, and it began a diplomatic phase. In their minds, that is a major accomplishment. Number two, achieving the Straits of Hormuz shutdown gives them leverage in the region. This is what they think, geopolitically over other Gulf states, in the sense that right now they're still imposing some level of control, and two, they can threaten to shut it down at any time. That gives them, in their minds, that kind of geopolitical leverage going forward. I think they think it quite on the same as a nuclear weapon, in a sense, because it gives them a capability for deterrence and huge geopolitical blackmail, much as a nuclear weapon would do as well. So that's a major event for them, and we can't underestimate it. And they will use the Straits of Hormuz in the negotiations as their leverage and play it to their advantage to try to get as much concessions from the administration as possible. I think our negotiators understand everything I just said. And certainly going forward here is going to be some very tough, challenging negotiations dealing with the Iranians. We have significant leverage, but they believe they do as well.
I think it's interesting that you say that you think these negotiations are going to go past the 60-day mark simply because Iran warned just last week that any commercial vessel failing to follow routes approved by Tehran through the strait would face a, quote, forceful response. The Wall Street Journal has reported in the past that the president has weighed restarting the war with Iran. I mean, what is the red line here, General, between the United States and Iran? What is the red line for the president where he says enough is enough?
Well, certainly the Straits of Hormuz would likely be the reality of it. I mean, certainly if Iran does any major attack, that certainly would put us back into major combat operations. But Iran really still wants to maintain control of those straits in terms of when a ship can leave and where a ship will go, and also pay some form of insurance. We have got to stop that, and if they continue to attack shipping that doesn't abide by the rules that they're trying to impose, that would likely, over time, bring us back into, I think, a graduated step. Limited attacks, possibly reimpose the naval blockade, possibly forcefully take control of the straits, and, of course, the other major event would be just full-out return to major combat operations out of frustration that Iran is never going to make a deal that's consequential and meeting the objectives of the Trump administration.
So, what do you think, Bill? Do you think Iran's going to uphold their end of the bargain?
Absolutely not. And I think too, if you watch the news over the weekend, the Ayatollah, they did the big funeral and they did all that. And, I had a terrible thought that I won't go into the thought, but, it is uniting a faction of the country under his casket as it's paraded through. And they talk about that. He's got 3 sons, all of age. Mm-hmm. And they were crying profusely and because they believe in what he believes. And so you've got three heads of a snake for revenge. And they've already pledged that they are going to kill Trump and Netanyahu. So they put a hit out. They've said that. And they, I spit at thee. They're going to sit there and do whatever they can. The Strait of Hormuz, it's not theirs, but they think it is. They're going from that point. And we ought to sit there and take that out of their hands and go, we ought to take that as if it's ours.
So, Bill, let me ask you.
It's the world's.
So, I think you're onto something, and I think you're 100% right that they're not going to abide by their end of the bargain.
No,
and by the way,
that's off the table.
By the way, their belief is that it is okay to lie to the infidel if it achieves your purpose in the name of Allah.
And in the name of Allah, they are going to spit at thee. They are going to sit there and strike at us. And they've even said so. They've already put they won't rest until they cripple America to a point that we say uncle, and then they got us. And then, or they kill both Netanyahu and Trump. They're after. They've said that's what they want to do. And they're using, the Ayatollah as a martyr to reunite. And if they get the people involved too, then we have no choice but to sit there and put troops on the ground and go in and break things and blow them up. But I would say if we break things and blow them up, they have to understand one thing. I will not vote for one tax dollar to go over and rebuild their butts. They're on their own.
Trump is a smart guy. You have to think that he knows all the things we're talking about. Yet he still goes out and says, "Oh, the ceasefire is they really want a bargain." No, anybody who casually observing from the sidelines can see they don't want to deal with you or me, or they want nothing more than to win. That's it.
And Trump is a businessman. He's gonna play the optimistic hand until he's got no choice. Now, as a businessman, Trump is, his record is impeccable. That doesn't mean he's won everything that he's wanted.
Right.
He's had some failures. He's had some losses. But then he just picked up and moved on and came back tenfold. If in your negotiation, you never sit there and show any weakness. So he's got to sit there and say, things are going along well. Things are going along well. Things are going along well until, you know what, I've had enough. I'm going to have to give him a good smack.
Over the weekend, I heard it was reported by somebody who would know that there are over 1,000 al-Qaeda operatives in our country. They believe they're at least divided into 3 separate cells, attack groups, and they anticipate that at some point we're going to be hit by these people. They're going to attack us internally.
They're going to do something. Yeah, they'll attack us, and they're probably going to do something that is symbolic. We've been talking about the reflecting pool, but, that is just, that's, somebody sitting there, vandalism. That's just vandalism is all it is. But you go and do something like, we had the World Trade Center. There's still a lot of debate about that, what really took place there. But you take down something, a national monument, or you go down and you take out, our head of state, our government, or something like that. Then you got all hell that's going to be on your hands and on your doorstep.
Yep. I think that we're on the verge of something major happening in our country. I don't think it's something which is going to be. It'll be big. I do believe we are on the verge of some type of major situation, and I hope that our government isn't ignoring these signs. When you have 1,000 Al Qaeda in your country, that's enough said there. And if you're wondering how they got in, well, thank you, Joe Biden. Joe Biden waved them in like there's nothing to see here. Just keep moving, and so they just walked across our border.
Yeah, he didn't open his kimono. He took the damn thing off.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. Victor Davis Hanson, who I think is one of the smartest thinkers on our side of the aisle, he was talking about our Constitution and communism and where we are right now over the weekend. And he said our Constitution has taken some hits, but it's pretty resilient. Listen.
Gwen Wood on a milestone birthday. We want to reflect on the state of the nation. I checked in with an American historian, Hoover Institution senior fellow Victor Davis Hanson, to get his report card. I wanted to pick your brain a bit as a historian as we mark 250 years. How do you think we're doing as a country?
I think we're doing pretty well. Our Constitution has been under a stress test lately, but it's durable. It's the oldest constitutional republic in the world right now. And as a historian, I always look at the historical barometers of a healthy society, and they're pretty fundamental. Fuel, we're the biggest producer of oil and gas in the history of civilization. Food, we're the largest food producer, contrast to China that imports 30% of its food, 11 million barrels of oil a day. Our military recruitment's up. We're starting to stress quantity and different types of procurement and weaponry. It's at its zenith. I think it's very good. Our fertility rate, Shannon, has gone back up to about 1.71. It's not where it should at the millennium. That's a good barometer. I think most of our worries are about unity. I think there's a little recrudescence of tribalism where people are identifying by their ethnic, racial, religious, sexual orientation, identity as essential rather than incidental to being an American. And we have the most immigrants we've ever had that were non-native born, 53 million, 16% of the population. We know the melting pot works. It has in the past. But with this new types of large numbers, percentage and actual numbers, we need to get back to the melting pot and kind of drop this salad bowl flirtation. So I'm kind of worried about that. Yeah. But otherwise, I think we're in good shape.
Well, that's good coming from you to hear the positive outlook. I want to talk through those who aren't so sure. We've got brand new Fox News polling. It says this: how well is democracy working in the U.S. today? Extremely or very well, 39%, but 60% say they don't think it's working very well or not at all. What do you say to those who feel like, okay, we've got some negatives here, and for some in our polling, those outweigh the positive?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and I'll be blunt with you, I think a lot of it is the 40 to 45% who are college educated. I spent 50 years of my life in the university, but I must tell you that it's no longer empirical and inductive reasoning anymore. It's more indoctrination, especially in the social science and humanities. So what basically, and these are the people who train our K through 12 young people. So from K K through 12 to the BA for about almost half the country. They're getting drummed into them that we're a racist, sexist country that was bad at the beginning, that got worse during our maturity, and is it awful now? And so we've really got to address that and reintroduce civic education and basic history. We don't teach history. History is now melodrama about the sins of the past rather than tragedy, where certain things happen in the world and we try to overcome them. And then the final thing is it's always absolute, especially with the left. They never say compared to what. It's very strange to have 50 million people and half of them come in here from, I'll be frank, failed states, and yet they're very critical of the state or the nation or culture that either they or their parents chose to embrace and come here, and yet they're so critical, and yet we never say to them, well, why did you come? I think people have to be more explicit in their love of the country and to appreciate how different it is and how exceptional it is compared to the alternatives. And we don't ask that of anybody anymore. Mm-hmm. But we need to cross-examine a lot of people who just have this boilerplate negativity.
Well, I will say that one of the bright spots in our polling shows that the majority of people do believe our best days as a country are still ahead of us. And from that, I take some optimism as well. Professor, thank you for your time. Always good to see you.
That's Victor Davis Hanson with Shannon Bream on her show over the weekend. I think he's on the same page as me. I believe that we're doing okay. I love the way he said we've got to get back to being more of a melting pot than a salad. I was thinking this morning before we started the show, one of the operations that streams programs on the internet, they think nothing now about throwing in a Spanish commercial. And I was thinking, no. That should be almost prohibited. We're in America. English is our language, and we should make it so that they have to speak English.
We're giving that up. When people come here, they should have learned the language. It is the national language. It has been before it was declared by Trump the national language. But now there are people here. Now, I get it. When you come to visit, you're a tourist, you're going to speak a foreign language. And I get that. And you might try to muddle through, and I appreciate that. When I've gone overseas, I've tried to at least have enough knowledge of the language to where I can, gas station or grocery store or a Hilton hotel,
right.
Whatever. You want to be able to get around and say what you need. So I get that. But you have people here that have come here. They are or are not citizens, most likely not. And they might be talking English, but then, you walk by and they do a sudden change. Now, I'm not paying attention to what you're saying until you do that. When you do that, then I'm sitting there going, wait a minute.
You're in our country. You're enjoying our benefits, and you're essentially isolating yourself from us?
There was a lady there's a friend of mine. She's a clerk at a convenience store, and I went in, and she was mad, and so she had to vent to somebody. So she did to me, but a lady that is not a citizen didn't like something about having to wait in line for the service, and unloaded on her in a foreign language. What she didn't know is the lady behind the counter spoke that language, and she sat there very properly and sat there. And when she rang everything up and got the change, she goes, oh, by the way. And then she changed her from English to the language, told her, I understood everything you said, and I don't appreciate it. And you better hope you never run into me again, because, she was at work. She couldn't do anything. And the person there was shocked. I think it's funny, but you can't learn everybody's language. But if you're going to come here and participate in our society, there is a universal language. It's called English, and you better learn it.
Bill, the media does everything they can to run cover for the non-legal residents of our country. Case in point, over the weekend, absolute chaos erupted in Newport Beach, California on Saturday, as non-residents. You got to love this. Non-residents visiting the peninsula brawled, rioted, looted, and destroyed a grocery store on the 4th of July. They weren't doing it to celebrate, friends. They were doing it to shove it in our face.
If I went to their homeland, I'm a non-resident, and I go in and I go, you know what? I don't like this store and I don't like you. Let me take a sledgehammer to your store display window. I'm going to bust down your door. I'm going to take it and slam your cash register. Would I be called a non-resident and be told, you shouldn't have done that? Now, please go home. Or would I be sitting in a stinkhole jail for the rest of my living life in a foreign country?
Oh, yeah. I think you answered your own question.
Oh, okay.
By the way, down in North Carolina over the weekend, a female police officer was attacked and beaten by a mob during an apparent teen takeover style event on the 4th of July. It was a block party. They don't say, by the way, whether they were illegals or whether they were non-residents, in that story.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, you want to know how legal residents of our country react to our country? Go to the celebration on the mall on the 4th of July. Go to your local town celebration of the 4th of July and watch the fireworks. Where I was, seriously, in my backyard, we had a fireworks display from the neighborhood that matched anything I've seen by any town. It was unbelievable. And you could hear the people applauding all over the area. But it wasn't the only fireworks display. You could look out over, I live kind of on a ridge, and you could look for miles, and you could see other towns with their fireworks displays. It sounded like an artillery barrage. It was amazing. People were cheering and celebrating. That's America. That's America.
You know what? And it was good to see that. I did see that all over. I went to actually a lake display on Friday. They had it they had it Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all the same display. So I went Friday when I knew, wouldn't have the crowd and did that. And then we had a private one on Saturday. And I was sitting there going, I kicked back in my Adirondack chair, just looking up at the sky, and I could see them take off and I could see them blow up in the sky over my head. And these were just as good as, and it was a 20-minute display. So, I didn't pay for it, but it was nice to see, and it was just as good as going.
The one in my neighborhood went for 45 minutes. I don't know who paid for this, and it was one of my rich neighbors, I'm sure. But it went for 45 minutes, and it was one barrage after the other. I thought to myself, I used to go to the town fireworks display when I was a kid back in New England, and it was never as good as what I was seeing in my backyard. But you know how close it was, Bill? They were 100 yards from my house. I had some of the ashes from the embers from in my yard.
That'll happen.
Yep.
Hey, look, I live in a mountainous area where I live, and there are two battling families, actually three, and every year they each see who has the best fireworks display, but they don't shoot them off all at once. They do them in like staged barrages, like the one family that's off to the right shoots them, and then the one down at the left shoots them, and then the one in the middle shoots them. And I'm like going, so, you can sit out there for hours on end with your wine or your beer and sit there and go, okay, this is pretty good. And when they're all done, which actually it's when you're done after a few hours, you go, well, it's pretty good. And, apparently they start buying these things. The people that do that, they buy a little bit in January, they buy a little bit in February, March, April, May, they buy it all year round. And then, they save up for a big blowout. That's what they do.
Yeah. Bill, if I told you there had to be 20 that I could see from where I was, from my yard, from all around the area, different neighboring towns and communities and villages. Amazing. And by the way, it was special. And you could hear people cheering all over the place. That's America. That's not.
I think there's still pride there. And there's, we still have a heartbeat, a strong heartbeat. But we need to sit there and basically get it
There's somebody, Bill,
altogether.
who wants to put a stake in it.
Yeah.
There are people in our country, bad people, who want to put a stake in that heart. So you have to pray that we're strong enough and smart enough to not let them have the opportunity. I'll just leave it at that. My friend, I'm all done for the day. I have more stuff, but the clock on the wall says, hey, guys, you run out of time. So have a great remainder of your well, actually, I'll see you tomorrow, but enjoy your day. Enjoy your day on your vacation.
As long as I have a microphone and a camera, I guess have podcast will travel.
This guy's amazing, friends. He could do it from anywhere. He could do a podcast from a moving bus. That's Bill.
I have done a broadcast from a moving bus.
It's amazing how he does it, too. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, we could tell stories, but perhaps we shouldn't.
Well, what's
People will get
strange, when
bored.
at the very end of the podcast, when he's on a bus and he gets up and he screams those words, everybody gets off. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The last time I screamed this, the bus driver, he slammed on the brakes.
Yes.
I fell down in the aisle, but I couldn't help but just going, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
Who are we? And why are we here? Will we be welcome or possibly feared? Do we unite and stand tall as a nation of one? Or split and divide or be mocked and shunned? Are our leaders patriotic, honest and true? Do they share our beliefs? Are they red, white, and blue? The truth is out there, you just have to search. Settle for less, you'll be left in the lurch. No left-leaning lies, no socialist swear. It's straight talking truth from your friends Jim and Bill. Are our leaders patriotic, honest and true? Do they share our belief? Are they red, white, and blue? Are our leaders patriotic, honest and true? Do they share our beliefs? Are they red, white, and blue?
All music the property of Jim and Bill. All rights reserved.
This is CRN America.